The British High Street has quietly become a kind of laboratory, a place where 100-year-old names run desperate, expensive experiments just to prove they can survive the digital age. And few of those experiments have been bolder or costlier than the one Marks & Spencer ran in 2019. M&S is one of the most recognizable brands in Britain, around 140 years old, a fixture of every town centre. The place your nan bought her cardigans and you panic bought the Christmas food. But by 2019, it had a glaring, faintly embarrassing hole in its business. It could sell you a ready meal in a shop, but it could not deliver you a weekly food shop to your door. Not a single bag. In the age of Amazon and one-click everything, one of Britain's most trusted food brands had almost no online grocery business at all. So it made a bet, a £750 million bet that it could fix that overnight by buying its way into the future. Today, that bet has become one of the most awkward, drawn-out headaches in modern British business. A stake M&S now says is worth precisely nothing. Tangled up in a bitter fight with the very partner it married, this is the story of how Ocado became M&S'S biggest headache. The bold bet. Rewind to February 2019. M&S walks into the room and announces it's paying up to £750 million for half of Ocado's UK retail business, creating a joint venture called Ocado Retail, owned 50-50. The vision was genuinely ambitious. Overnight, M&S would have a world-class online grocery operation. Giant automated warehouses, a slick delivery fleet, and a ready-made army of loyal online shoppers. The boardroom logic was simple and on a slide, beautiful. Take the best-loved food range in Britain, bolt it onto the most advanced grocery delivery machine in the country, and finally have a real answer to Amazon and the relentless shift online. The chief executive at the time, Steve Rowe, and chairman Archie Norman sold it as transformational, the move that would drag M&S at last into the modern age of shopping. Fast forward to the headache. Fast forward to today, and that ambitious dream has curdled into something much messier. Instead of a triumphant leap into the digital future, M&S ended up overpaying at the very top of the market for half of a business it didn't fully control, a business it now values on its own books at zero. And rather than a happy partnership, it's ended in a bitter public row over a final cheque worth nearly £200 million. This is the story of how the shiniest deal in the M&S turnaround became its most stubborn liability, and a brutal lesson in the limits of buying your way out of a problem. The prize: what Ocado actually. To understand why M&S wanted this so badly, you have to understand what Ocado actually is, because it's not really a supermarket at all. Ocado was founded back in 2000 by 3 former Goldman Sachs bankers, at a time when the idea of buying your groceries over the internet sounded faintly ridiculous. It had no shops, none. Just a website, and then behind the scenes something genuinely radical. Enormous automated warehouses crawling with thousands of robots gliding across a grid, picking and packing your shopping with a precision no human-run supermarket could match. For years it rode alongside Waitrose, delivering its posh groceries to middle-class doorsteps across the country, and quietly it became 2 businesses in one. There was the shop, the bit that sells you food, and there was the technology company, the bit that licenses those robotic warehouses to other grocers around the world. For the longest time, the city mocked it as the online grocer that never turned a profit. But underneath the jokes, Ocado had built the most sophisticated grocery logistics operation on Earth. And that was the crown jewel M&S had its eye on. Why M&S needed it the threat? Because through the 2010s, the ground had shifted violently under M&S'S feet. Online grocery went from a niche for busy professionals to something close to normal. Amazon was scaling hard in the UK. The big supermarkets were all racing to deliver, and M&S, for all the love people had for its food, was structurally stuck. Here's the awkward truth. M&S food was built around small, tempting food halls on the high street and at train stations. Grab and go. Treat yourself on the way home. What it had never built was a proper full-basket home delivery operation. You simply could not do your big weekly shop with M&S online. In a world where next-day and same-day delivery were fast becoming the baseline expectation, that wasn't just a gap, it was starting to look like an existential one. And building a delivery empire from scratch would take the better part of a decade M&S didn't feel it had. Why Ocado? Why now the Waitrose slot? Then a door opened. Ocado's long-running partnership with Waitrose was coming to an end in September 2020, which meant the most advanced delivery platform in the country was about to need a new grocery partner. M&S pounced. Under the deal, M&S Food would replace Waitrose on Ocado.com. In one move, M&S would inherit a national online grocery operation, those robotic warehouses and hundreds of thousands of existing habitual online shoppers. No decade of building.
No. Starting from zero on paper, it was the perfect shortcut into the future. The price and the panic. But the price was steep, and the way M&S chose to pay for it rattled the city badly. The total was up to £750 million, around £560 million up front, plus up to another £187.5 million to be paid later. If the business hit certain targets to fund it, M&S did two things investors hate to see together. It launched a rights issue to raise about £600 million, effectively asking shareholders for more money, and it cut its dividend by more than 25%. For a company whose investors had long treated that dividend as sacred, that was a flare fired into the night sky. The shares dropped around 10% on the news. Analysts split straight down the middle.
Half called it visionary. Finally, M&S doing something bold. The other half called it desperate, a stretched retailer overpaying for relevance. And hanging over all of it was one nagging question nobody could answer. Would Ocado's Waitrose loyal customers, who'd chosen the service partly for the Waitrose label, actually accept M&S Food in its place? Early optimism, the COVID boom. At first, the timing looked like pure genius. The deal completed in the summer of 2019. M&S Food went live on Ocado in September 2020, right as the pandemic sent demand for online grocery through the absolute roof. Suddenly, everyone wanted their shopping delivered, and Ocado couldn't add capacity fast enough. M&S finally had a booming online food business at exactly the moment the whole country was ordering in. The dreaded switch from Waitrose went far more smoothly than the skeptics had feared. Shoppers stayed, baskets filled up, and M&S products quietly became best sellers on the platform. For a brief, glorious window, the synergy the boardroom had promised looked like it was materializing perfectly. The bet looked inspired. The deeper reality, the mismatch. But that boom masked a much harder reality underneath, and it's the same trap Sainsbury's fell into with Argos. M&S and Ocado are two completely different kinds of business, run on completely different logic. M&S is a premium retailer. It lives on brand, on quality, on decent margins, and the willingness of customers to pay a little more for something a little nicer. Ocado Retail is the opposite animal, a low-margin, capital-hungry logistics operation whose profitability depends on those staggeringly expensive robotic warehouses and the razor-thin economics of selling groceries. And here's the detail that really matters. M&S didn't buy the technology, it bought half of the shop, while still depending on and paying fees to Ocado Group, a separate publicly listed technology company with its own shareholders and its own agenda. So M&S now owned half a low-margin grocer that was permanently reliant on a volatile partner it didn't control. Then the tailwind died. As the pandemic faded and the cost of living crisis bit, shoppers fled to Aldi and Lidl, and those premium online baskets started to shrink. Ocado Retail slid from boom straight into losses, and M&S owned half of every one of them. The financial anchor. And just like Argos had its crushing business rates bill, this deal came with its own structural anchor, the sheer, unforgiving cost of the model itself. During the pandemic, Ocado Group, the technology parent, briefly became one of the most valuable companies in the entire country. At one point, it was worth more than some of the supermarkets it actually supplied, despite holding a tiny sliver of the real grocery market. It was pure tech hype. Investors betting the robotic warehouses would take over the world. Then interest rates rose, the tech bubble hissed out of the air, and reality returned. Ocado Group's shares collapsed, falling something like 80% from their peak, and eventually tumbling out of the FTSE 100 altogether. Now, M&S didn't own shares in Ocado Group directly, but it owned half of a business chained to that partner and its enormous ongoing warehouse costs, a business bought at the absolute top of the market. And so quietly, M&S began writing the value of its Ocado Retail stake down and down, until eventually it valued that stake at zero. Over £500 million committed, and on its own books worth nothing. The leadership change. Then the man who championed the whole deal walked out of the door. Steve Rowe stepped down as chief executive in 2022, and his successor, Stuart Machin, working alongside chairman Archie Norman, brought a very different obsession to the job: fix the core M&S, food and clothing, the actual shops, and he pulled it off. Under Machen, M&S staged one of the great British retail turnarounds, sales up, clothing suddenly fashionable again, food halls busier than ever, and the share price climbing to multi-year highs. But that success had an awkward side effect. The better the core business looked, the worse the Ocado bet looked next to it. The high street business was flying, while the flashy digital acquisition sat in the corner losing money and generating letters from lawyers. It had become, to borrow the phrase used about Argos, the unloved child. The money fight. And then came the row over money, the part that turned a disappointing investment into an outright headache. Remember that deferred payment? The up to £187.5 million, roughly 190 million? That M&S agreed to pay later. That money was contingent on Ocado Retail hitting specific performance targets, tied to things like order volumes and holding on to customers. M&S looked hard at the numbers and concluded flatly that the targets had been missed, so it refused to pay. Ocado was furious. It argued the pandemic had scrambled all those metrics, that the surge and then the slump had thrown the targets off through no fault of its own, and it wanted its money. The payment came due in April 2025. M&S didn't hand it over. Stuart Machen was blunt about it. In M&S'S eyes, the stake is worth zero and nothing more is owed. What had been sold in 2019 as a visionary partnership had hardened into a standoff between two companies handcuffed together and no longer trusting each other. Who holds the whip now? And here's the twist that shows just how strange this marriage has become. In 2025, Ocado Group effectively took the reins of the joint venture, taking over reporting responsibility for Ocado Retail, and in doing so booked an enormous accounting gain of around £783 million from revaluing the very business M&S insists is worthless. That one move helped Ocado Group post a statutory half-year profit of over £600 million. Sit with that for a second. One owner values this joint venture at zero, the other just booked the best part of £750 million from revaluing it upwards. The same business, two completely contradictory stories, a near-perfect snapshot of how strained the relationship has become. And the maddening thing, the shop itself is actually doing fine. Ocado retail sales have been growing again, up around 15% in its latest year, but the partnership underneath is anything but settled, with constant speculation that M&S may eventually try to walk away from the bet entirely, or just possibly buy the whole thing outright. The lesson. Ultimately, the M&S and Ocado saga is a several £100 million lesson in the real limits of buying your way to relevance. On a boardroom slide in 2019, it looked unbeatable. Take Britain's best-loved food brand, bolt it onto the country's cleverest delivery machine, and out Amazon. In reality, M&S paid top dollar at the very peak of the market for half of a low-margin business it didn't control, tied to a partner whose fortunes swung wildly, and then watched the promised synergy get slowly ground down by economics, by timing, and by a fight over the final check. And that's the uncomfortable truth about this one. The logic wasn't stupid. Online grocery really was a gaping hole in M&S, and Ocado really was one of the few credible answers going. But strategically brilliant and financially painful can be exactly the same deal at exactly the same time. For M&S, this one still is. Call to action. So what do you reckon? Was buying into Ocado a smart, necessary move that finally hauled M&S into the online age? Or a wildly overpriced gamble it'll be untangling for years to come? Should M&S cut its losses and walk away, or double down and swallow the whole thing? Drop your thoughts in the comments and be honest. Do you actually do your food shop with M&S on Ocado, or are you still loyal to someone else entirely? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal business of British retail, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next one. Cheers for watching, and stay curious.